So good evening, and thank you for all sticking around and staying awake. Hopefully, we can take you through the last 8 minutes or so and keep you engaged with what we're talking about. One of the things we want to talk about is how oxygen works in wound healing. So we can get the first slide up. Thank you. So one of the things I want you to do as we begin this is we're going to do a little bit of audience participation, something you don't normally do, but it's crucial to understanding how this technology works. So do one thing for us, hold your breath. Now while you're doing that, you start to feel the effects of oxygen deprivation. And now imagine that you have a wound that's been recalcitrated. It's not working with other technologies, it's not healing, you've had this for a long time, and you come to find out you think it's because you have local vascular supply or capillaries are not working, and you're not getting oxygen to it. And you have the ability to get something that's small and wearable to supply oxygen continuously. So you see this, we call it continuous diffusion of oxygen therapy. The reason we call it that is because it's continuous. This generates oxygen, and it diffuses oxygen into the wound, just like you're breathing. Hopefully you're breathing again now. And what that does is it allows the wound to breathe continuously like we do. That's why our slogan's at the bottom. So how we do this is actually we use fuel cell technology to generate oxygen continuously from surrounding air. So what you're breathing right now comes into the device, gets converted by a fuel cell into pure oxygen, humidified, and goes into a proprietary dressing directly to your wound bed. Now what's critical about that is that we have a full system. So it's not just that we're generating oxygen, but we're also supplying it with a moist wound therapy dressing directly to the wound bed. As was mentioned before, we were founded here in 2007 to be able to deliver this technology and bring it to the market. One of the things we thought was when we got our FDA approval in 2009, we were ready to go. So we've got the approval, that's the big regulatory hurdle. You're ready to go. We can bring the product to market, improve quality of life, and help patients out. Well, lo and behold, we hit our second regulatory hurdle, CMS, reimbursement. And that's where he gets the fun.
Yeah, the fun part. Yeah, Medicare reimbursement has always been the challenge of the company. Our first contact with CMS was in January of 2010 to start a process for coding coverage and payment for the company's innovative and effective product. Little did we know what the headwinds were headed for. EO2 was subject to a 2003 CMS national coverage decision for hyperbaric oxygen, which specified topical oxygen as a non-payable and non-benefit. The hyperbaric, this was the result of a lobby battle between the existing low-tech topical oxygen companies and the hyperbaric Oxygen Society, all of which happened 5 years before the advanced technology was actually invented. Our new oxygen therapy was now in Death Valley, listed as investigational and non-payable. In order to get out of Death Valley, we worked with CMS for over a year to determine what did they require for us to get a payable code. The result was to design a placebo-controlled study to demonstrate efficacy of the therapy, which we conducted over a 6-year period, including EO2 providing regular progress reports to CMS with interim peer-reviewed publications. During that time, we pursued the wound care facilities and the Veterans Affairs and Indian Health, which purchased product from the federal supply schedule. These healthcare systems are not in the fee-for-service system, but are supported by a separate act of Congress. EO2 cannot participate in our private healthcare system as it is deeply tied to CMS. If CMS will not cover it, the private insurers won't cover it either. However, the VA facilities are run more like a private marketplace. Your product is placed on a price schedule, and it's up to the doctors and finance officers to determine whether or not the efficacy is worth the cost. In other words, our technology has been available to the VA and Indian Health patients since 2013, yet it is still unavailable to those of us on Medicare or private insurance plans, all because of the CMS restrictions.
Oops, there we go, thank you. This is where the story turns, because he mentioned Death Valley with reimbursement. One of the things we found is that we started approaching clinicians about using these technologies that there was a strong disbelief, especially in the United States, about topical oxygen or continuous delivery oxygen in wound care, that it didn't work. Now there's numerous reasons for this, and one you see up on the board. There was a device that was disposable, it was on the market before us a few years. A lot of the studies we wanted to go to had already used this device. As you can see in red, there's a few reasons this device would actually stop working. However, the device still had the indicator going that it was working. It said it was working, and that was a problem because there were studies that showed that it wasn't working, that this technology didn't work. To underscore that, when we approached, for example, Joe was talking about the placebo study, I approached Dr. David Armstrong, a thought leader in wound care, in wound healing, renowned worldwide, about this technology. Well, it turns out he had tried this. And this is where he came to me. He said, he looked me directly in the eye and said, stop right there. I've tried that. It doesn't work. I don't want to talk to you. I mean, he literally wanted me to go back out of his office. I said, I think I know what you're talking about. So I explained what you see on the board here. This is why I think it didn't work and what you had a problem with. Explained what we were doing. That we had technology that could actually monitor the wound bed. We could ensure efficacy of delivery of the oxygen to the wound and make sure that we were getting efficacious wound care. Well, he remained deeply skeptical because he'd been taught for over 30 years that topical oxygen didn't work. And we are considered to be topical oxygen. Even though we're continuous, always on, as you mentioned, or you saw earlier, hold your breath for a little bit, intermittent is a lot different than continuous. Well, with that, he helped us design a study that was fully blinded or placebo control, because the only difference in this group you see here is you had moisture with therapy oxygen, which is basically like a waterproof bandage, or moisture with therapy plus oxygen. Or as you did earlier, moisture with therapy without breathing, or moisture with therapy with breathing. That's what we did. What was really interesting is you look at the results of this study, we healed over twice as many wounds overall in the group, but what is even more interesting and probably counterintuitive is that as the wounds got worse or larger or more chronic, we got better results. For example, you see here, more than almost 3.5 times as many wounds healed in chronic wounds. That means wounds have been around a long time. If you look at weight-bearing wounds, that means, because patients are always so compliant, they never walk in their wounds. In those aspects, we healed almost 5 times as many wounds. These are things we weren't expecting, but it's things we found out because we could do a placebo trial. And Dr. David Armstrong, I think, has one of the best coined terms for what he saw in the results, is that it appears that the more you need CDO therapy, the better it works. It means the bigger the differential you get.
You, too, had been pursuing the chief of podiatry for the largest Indian Health medical center in Arizona for 2 years, just to get him to evaluate our technology. I think he got tired of me chasing him and offered 5 patients who were scheduled for below-the-knee amputation the following week. They had all failed their current standard of care. The challenge was that the device could show enough progress in 1 week, he would cancel the surgeries. Well, I really didn't think that 1 week was going to make that much of a difference on extreme cases, but we accepted the challenge. Today, all 5 of those patients have their limbs. That same physician reported last year at an Indian Health medical conference, they had reduced the amputation rate by 80% since adopting our technology into their formulary, saving the system a $500,000 lifetime cost per amputee, just to give you the size of this. The truly sad thing about this is that the Indian Health System, which also has the lowest funding available, is our biggest advocate. What else have we accomplished? I'm reminded by our Washington lobbyists, we are one of the few companies to successfully complete a little-known reconsideration process where CMS reversed a national coverage decision in 2018. CMS removed the technology from the investigational non-payable status and pushed the coverage decision to the Medicare contractors where we sit today. Most importantly, we had a public CMS hearing 2 weeks ago where the very first patient from the Indian health system who was scheduled for a below-the-knee amputation
And if you don't mind, I'm going to break in real quick because we're going to show some slides that I know are not typical here. So if you don't like wounds, look away. Okay, go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, sorry.
It's our business. Okay. So most importantly, you know, we had this public hearing up in Dallas just last week, or 2 weeks ago. And we brought in 2 patients, but the first patient from the Indian health system was scheduled for the below-the-knee amputation. We had him walk to the podium to make a comment. He told his heart-wrenching story of the physical and emotional suffering with a non-healing wound, despite the application of the paid and failed standard of care technologies. Yes, he has his limbs, and best of all, he's a traveling salesman today. This is why the people at EO2 and many of the people here tonight are in the healthcare profession. We are all passionate to give patients like Robert a better quality of life. And I'd like to thank the Health Cell to allow us to tell our story, and yet it's an incomplete story. We have a lot of work left to do and a lot of patients to serve. Thank you.
Thank you.